Christians are not going to vote. We had an article come out a couple of days ago, which is a study. It says a surprising number of Christians say they aren't voting. We're also going to look at a Pew Research study that shows a little bit of the split of where people lie religiously when you compare that to where they lie politically. Another study with just some data that I thought was pretty interesting, and then talk about Gen Z very briefly. So Christian voting is odd this season, more so than normal. Christians have always kind of had a hard time voting certain sects of Christianity. You obviously have the fanatics who are very much into Trump, always have been since 2016. But even that has kind of shifted in a sense since then. So we're going to look at that. The first thing I do want to look at is this article from Christianity Today regarding Gen Z voters. So this is a quote from a Gen Z individual. It said, your Christian values should lead you to love others and not necessarily take it upon yourself to judge them and try to fix them. That's not your job, Cotton said. I think it's important to recognize that Christians should help people and evangelize if that's what your denomination is focused on. Sure, what? Help people and evangelize if that's what your denomination is focused on. This is why, and I promise I'm not going to rant, this is why I absolutely hate denominations, and I believe they are of the devil, is the way that I like to say it. It's because of this. Helping people is not optional in Christianity. It's not denominational in Christianity. Evangelizing is not optional in Christianity. If you're not functioning based off of like the very key tenets of the Bible, you're not a Christian. If you're not following Christ, which is what a Christian is, then you're not a Christian. Jesus Christ was all about helping people. He was all about evangelizing. It's just so funny to see the word evangelize. And then if that's what your denomination or what your church essentially is focused on, it's what every church should be focused on. To varying degrees, it might look different, but that is an absolute requirement to be able to wear the title of Christian. Rant over. I promised I wouldn't, so I won't. But they continue. It's more about how you treat others and less about what you get out of it. Well, that much, Cotton, we can agree on. She pushes back when fellow Christians insinuate you can't be a Christian and a Democrat. I'm sure a lot of you have opinions on that. I'm going to keep this very much objective and try to not lean into any of my personal beliefs. I just want to cover some of the data. They continue, being a Democrat is not a monolith, she said. You can agree and disagree with different things in the party in the same way. I'm sure a lot of Republicans don't agree with everything their party is doing. Well, that I also agree with you on. Jacob Reese is one young Republican who doesn't agree with everything his party is doing at the moment. I don't think Trump represents the entire corpus of what the American conservative movement is. I think we can all kind of agree on that. Trump is not God. Trump is not, he's not this thing to be idolized. And I think there is a sect of the Republican movement, from what I just see, anecdotally and otherwise, there is a sect of that movement that is in the Christian environment where they kind of have him elevated a bit too high. If you really believe in what he's doing and that he's the right choice for all of this list of reasons, that's fine. But there does need to be, and I think most people have this down. I'm saying very specifically, I think it's a small sect of like the Republican movement. But there needs to be this dividing line of he is good for these reasons. That does not make him something holy. It doesn't make him something to idolize. He is just a man. He is severely flawed, just like the rest of us. He just wants to do things that you happen to agree with, that they are the right call for the country. That's fine, but it's an important distinction to be made, I feel like. Now, moving into one study from ArizonaChristian.edu, I'll link all of this down in the description below. I didn't want to go through too much of it because it's relatively long, but I did want to talk about one thing very briefly. Issues of greatest influence on which candidate to support among Christians who regularly attend church service. I found this pretty interesting. Inflation and cost of living does not surprise me. 67%. That makes sense. Economy, which is essentially the same thing, but in a greater scope, 64%. Totally understand. Immigration, border control, 60%. Again, not shocked. Crime, law and order, 60%, basically 59. Poverty and homelessness, all the way up at 43, which I'm not saying is bad. I just found that to be kind of interesting. Poor leadership, government mismanagement at 42%. Again, not wrong, don't disagree, but interesting. And the reason I find them interesting is because down here at 41% is abortion. I would have thought that would be higher. Maybe not number one, but you could argue it. Maybe it should be, you know. Again, I don't want to get subjective. I don't really want this to become about my opinion. So let's talk about kind of the outside looking in at the Christian faith, what Christians believe, what biblically the belief is on something like human life. Abortion, you could say biblically, should probably be number one, because we're talking about the image of God from a biblical perspective. Again, I'm not going to push any of my personal opinions or my arguments or whatever. I'm not even going to say, you know, where I think it should be or what I believe. Just biblically, as objectively as possible, protecting that which biblically, from a Christian worldview, we believe bears the image of God, that not being above money, the economy, immigration, crime, poverty and homelessness, and then poor leadership and government mismanagement. I just thought that was interesting. I don't really want to say anything beyond that. Now, Pew Research, most religious nuns align with, not the, you know, with the hat and the whole get up, nuns, N-O-N-E-S, align with Democrats. Most Protestants, Catholics, tend toward the Republicans. This is the party identification among religious groups and religiously unaffiliated voters. Again, just interesting. All Protestants, 59% lean towards the Republican Party. That doesn't surprise me. It's been in that relative range for quite a while. White evangelical Protestants, 85%. Again, not surprising. White non-evangelical Protestants drops down to 58. Black Protestants are 84 on the Democrat side. So that's interesting. But one distinction does need to be made, that the white evangelical Protestants at 85 and the black Protestants at 84, Republican to Democrat respectively. I would want to get more detail on this because white evangelical Protestants might not necessarily be the exact opposing party of the black Protestants. Wouldn't it be black evangelical Protestants? Because that exists. And why? Maybe they just left that out. I don't know. But to me, that's a distinction that would need to be made. I don't think the numbers would differ too severely. I just, for data's sake, find that kind of interesting. All Catholics, 52 on the Republican side, 44 on the Democrat side. White Catholic, 61 on the Republican side. Hispanic Catholic, 60. So almost, again, even, but towards the Republican side. Again, nothing surprising here. The Latter-day Saints, totally pushing Republican. 75% on the Republican side, 23 on the Democrat side. Jewish, 69 Democrat, not surprising. Muslim, this is surprising. This is pretty surprising. Muslim is 66% on the Democrat side. That's interesting. That is a bit of a shock if you know anything about our Muslim friends. And then all unaffiliated total. So atheist, agnostic, and then nothingness. People who believe in nothingness, which is basically atheism. Unaffiliated total, 70 towards Democrat, 27 towards Republican. Quick note on this is the reason I started this YouTube channel like 10 years ago was because I started an Instagram page and it was an apologetics page. So all I would do is argue with atheists. We would just debate and have conversation. And to be honest with you, I loved that more than anything I've done since because they were intelligent. They would have real conversations. Even if it got kind of heated, there was usually respect. Like it was approached very academically and very much like we were both adults. It was really cool. And then Christians started to follow me. But in the beginning, it was almost entirely atheist. All that to say, atheism has shifted if you are involved in this sphere at all in social media, the atheists have become very, very, very different. They're highly political. Almost every conversation I have with atheists now, which my Twitter has kind of turned into, it's all politics. It's all politics and culture. And there's almost no arguing about history, about exegesis, about the Bible. The atheists today seem to know nothing about the Bible, whereas the atheists that I was talking to and debating with 10 years ago, they knew a lot about the Bible. They were wildly educated in the Bible. They would put most Christians to shame in their biblical education. Today, that is not the case. I don't know what that is, but it seems like they've kind of been captured by the political and cultural sphere of society. That's kind of sad, man. Like, it's not fun to debate them anymore. It's not fun to converse with them anymore. Study. This is what we're here for. A surprising number of Christians say they aren't voting. But real fast, this is where you're watching this right now. We're going to start doing a live stream every Tuesday again. This will be what we used to do, where we'd pick a topic like euthanasia, Luciferianism, atheism, is hell real, all that jazz, every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Central Time on Tattooed Theist on YouTube. We're going to do that. You can come on using your voice. You can call in. If you join the Discord, there's a link in the description below. Tuesday nights. And if you join Discord, you'll be able to find all of that super easily, because you can just pop into Discord here, and then you can go to the top and you can hit events. And then you'll see Sunday, live Bible study out of the Canon. Tuesday, live topic discussion. And then Thursday, we do the Apocrypha. So the two Bible studies, the Thursday and the Sunday, we do on this channel, live Bible study. It's youtube.com/@live Bible study. No numbers, no kitty lick, straight across. It's a new channel, but that's where we're doing this is strictly biblical education. This is strictly us sitting down and reading the Bible live and practicing actual exegesis, because people just don't do it, and your church probably isn't either. So if you'd like to supplement your Bible study, come join us, but just join the Discord. We have 215 people in here. It's a real great place to be. Wildly intelligent people, way smarter than me. And it's always easy to find the events from there. Now to the study. A surprising number of Christians say they aren't voting. As the 2024 presidential race between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris intensifies, new research from the Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University, led by Dr. George Barna, indicates that millions of Christians are unlikely to vote. Barna says this election season is marked by a significant drop in voter enthusiasm. Let me make it bigger for my eye's sake, particularly among Christian voters who have historically been key players in determining the outcome of presidential races. That's why I said this year is different. This race is different. According to the research, only 51% of people of faith are likely to vote this November. The results also reveal that large numbers of Christian churches have distanced themselves from the election, refusing to even encourage congregants to vote and avoiding teaching related to many of the key social issues on which the election may hinge. I feel like we all know this. And if you go to church, I'm sure that you know this. If you go to a physical church, pastors are not talking about a lot of this stuff anymore. Not all. Of course. So some of you will sit there and say, my pastor talks about all this. That's awesome. Good for you. Keep going to that church. I would say, with no shame, if you have heard nothing about, and it doesn't need to be partisan. It doesn't need to be his subjective view of what you should do in terms of voting, although I do believe that your pastor should be doing that. But even if not, if your pastor in no way has talked about the presidential election, has talked about the ethics and the morals behind the policies that are up to be running the country for the next 4 years, if they've just been mute on the entire thing, I would leave that church. That is not a pastor. A pastor is a shepherd. A pastor is meant to lead. So if our pastors, for the most part, in many churches, and again, if this isn't you, totally disregard, but this is many, I'd say definitely more than 50% in all of the United States, pastors have already been failing in biblical education and in Christian leadership, in leading you into understanding what it actually is to be a Christian. They are there to make you feel good. They are there to make you leave with this emotional feeling inside of you of goodness, rather than what it should be and what it was. And if you read the Bible, you don't need to take my word for it. Read through the New Testament, read the epistles. You were meant to leave an interaction with the pastor feeling, yes, like reassured. You should feel good, but oftentimes you should feel convicted. Sometimes you should feel shame, I would say. And maybe that's too far, but at the very least, convicted. If you're never feeling convicted when you lead church, you have a bad pastor. I don't think there's any way around that at all. So if they've been doing that for a while, which they have, absolutely and definitely, and now also they refuse to talk about, no, we're not supposed to be of the world, to use your Christian sayings that I know you all know. We're not supposed to be of the world, but we're absolutely 100% supposed to be in the world. You're supposed to be influencing the world. We are supposed to be influencing people. What is evangelism? It is influencing people. If you don't like how that sounds, because it sounds like you're selling, you are. You are. Evangelism is you selling the gospel to somebody. You are making a case. You are pitching a concept, an idea. You are selling someone on Jesus Christ. That's what we do. That's what Christians are supposed to do. If you're not doing that, if you go to church and you stay in your little silo and you only talk to Christians and you never have these tough conversations and you never get into the actual policies that are going to be running the country, which will affect people, there is a domino effect of what happens in government. And usually the people who have already kind of bad situations are the ones who end up suffering more than anybody else. By choosing to not participate, you are being a part of evil. You are being a passive participant in what then happens. It is you standing on the sidelines, watching something take place, choosing to have no part in it, and then being like, when a bunch of people are then affected negatively because you had a chance to do something, you chose not to. I didn't participate. I have nothing to do with it. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And again, I'm not telling you who to vote for. I have said nothing about anything because that's not my job. My job is to get you to vote. I feel like, just like my job is to get you to understand the Bible. That's why we do live Bible study. That's why we have the Discord. That's why I do social media. I hate social media. I don't necessarily like doing YouTube, but I feel that it is a part of my job to teach these things because that's what being a pastor is. And that's why a lot of people don't like me. And I'm comfortable with that. It's the truth. I don't want to sway you one way or the other. I want to sway you into thinking, which is the entire thesis behind me being on YouTube. I don't want to tell you what to think, but you need to think. You need to think. You should probably vote. Continuing on, rant over. I see two huge takeaways from this blockbuster report, said Len Munsell, president of Arizona Christian University. First, that Christians could be the deciding factor in a bunch of federal and state races and are choosing not to be. And second, that they are longing for their local church to instruct them on how to think biblically about policy and politics. Oh, wow. It's almost as if that's what the church's job is to instruct you how to think, I would add, critically and biblically about policy and politics. It's the pastor's job, baby girl. They don't want to be told how to vote, but they want to know why they should vote and how to view political issues from a biblical framework. The Bible teaches us in Proverbs 29:2 that when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. Because why? When righteous people are in authority, that trickles down to everybody else in varying degrees. Continuing, but when a wicked man rules, the people groan, which is what I was saying earlier. There is a domino effect. Unfortunately, if you are legally allowed to vote, you are participating whether you cast a ballot or not. You are. You're either an active participant or you are a passive participant. And if you are a passive participant, when you feel that, no, maybe neither candidate is good. Maybe neither of them is biblical, because they're not. Maybe neither of them is the greatest that we could expect from a human leader to lead us into a Christian view of America. One is better than the other. And again, I'm not saying who. You decide. And I don't necessarily care who you decide. I have my own personal opinions. You need to have yours, but then you need to do something with them. Because if we know, the reality is you could take Kamala and you could take Trump and you could do a pros and cons list, or perhaps a Venn diagram. Hopefully somebody gets that. But if you do a pros and cons list of each, no matter what, you'll get to a point where one is the lesser of the two evils. And I know that's not ideal. It's not ideal that we have to choose either a non-Christian bad president or a non-Christian bad president. It's not a great choice, but one is less bad. They have to be, because they're not the same person. They don't have the same beliefs. They don't have the same policies. The policies won't affect the the Americans in the same way. They won't affect the actual population in the same way. If anything, don't think about who it is that you need to vote for. Think about just the actual policies. What is going to hurt people less? Not even what is the best. What is the best? What will cause the least amount of damage to my brothers and sisters, to the people that I live near? What is going to damage the least? I'll shut up. I'm continuing here in the second paragraph. But without pastors willing to speak about the Bible's perspective on policy issues, and without them encouraging Christians to vote, it's hard to see how we can have the kind of godly government that would enable our people to rejoice. The Christian voter gap, a game changer. The Cultural Research Center defines people of faith as anyone who identifies with a recognized religion such as Christianity, Judaism, Mormonism, or Islam. While 66% of voting age adults identify as Christian, only half, 51% of all faith people are expected to vote. This translates to 104 million people who are likely to sit out the 2024 election, 41 million of whom were born-again Christians and 32 million regular church-going Christians. That's insane. In 2020, the gap between Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden was just 7 million votes. This is why I say, whether you like it or not, you are participating. Choosing not to vote is a choice. It is an action that will then have a reaction, and then there will be either negative or positive consequences. The real story lies in the margins of victory in swing states, where an average of 60,000 votes per state determine nearly 40% of the electoral votes needed to win, Barnett emphasized. In this context, the 32 million regular churchgoers who won't vote in 2024 is a game changer. Why Christians aren't voting? The research pinpoint several reasons why Christians are stepping away from the voting booth. 68% lack of interest in politics and elections. Grow up. Good God, lack of interest. I have no interest in what happens to our country. I have no interest in how people are affected by our government. I have no interest. Good Lord, that's so embarrassing. 57% dislike all major candidates. That one I get. That one I sympathize with. I understand that. The 68%, you guys are children. The 57% disliking both candidates, I get it. I get it. 55% feel none of the candidates reflect their most important views. Again, I get it to a degree. The thing is, like we looked at here, the biggest policies, the biggest, call them moral issues, each candidate has their view. So again, for me, which does the least amount of damage is the way that I have to view that. Maybe they don't reflect my most important views. Like I said here, maybe abortion should be higher, I believe, from a Christian perspective. But if you look at this, one candidate on abortion, other candidate on abortion, which one causes the least amount of damage? Just as an example. I'm not saying that's the way I swing, just an example. But you could do that with any of these, no matter which one. Inflation and cost of living. Which candidate will solve this more? It's not perfect. It's not what you want. Welcome to life. 52% believe their vote will not make a difference. I sympathize with that too. The thing is, though, like, having a defeatist attitude is also a very childish thing. That's a very childish thing. Well, it's not going to make a difference, so I'm just not going to be a part of it. Or you could take 10 minutes, be a part of it, do the right thing. It's called integrity. Doing the right thing regardless of what then happens, because you know that it's the right thing. I shouldn't have to say that to adults. 48% think the election results will be manipulated. This also is, regardless of which side you're on, is a fear, right? Regardless of which side you're on. It's a significant fear in 2024 for 100 different reasons. For 100 different reasons. I get it. For Barta, these statistics reflect a deeper crisis of disengagement and distrust, a lack of confidence in the process, frustration with the choices, and a general apathy toward the political sphere have left millions of believers on the sidelines, he explained. What would encourage Christians to vote? Despite the resistance, the survey explored possible scenarios that might inspire non-voters to cast a ballot. However, none of the options presented, including receiving encouragement from family or friends or believing their vote could sway the results, moved even 1 in 5 of these non-voters. It's interesting, man. It's close. This is coming up here real quick. And it'll be really interesting to see what happens. I am of the opinion, if it's not blaringly obvious at this point, as a Christian, you have a moral and ethical responsibility to vote. And that's it. Not in a specific direction, not for a specific candidate. You have a moral responsibility to lay out the policies, not how you feel about one of them, not the personality of one of them. The policies. What are the things that will happen? What will the consequences be? How much will people suffer? I believe it's really hard to get away from that being a moral and ethical responsibility that you as a Christian have. Personally, if you disagree with me, let me know. Honestly, I'm interested in this topic of whether Christians are ethically required to vote from a biblical perspective. I'd be interested to see what you have to say. I love you guys. Join the Discord. The link is in the description below. And come on with us during some of the live streams. We have a good time. It's fun. Love you. Bye.